right, so today we're going to look at creating something referred to as a rate law and how orders of reactions kind of go with rate laws in general. So when we're talking about a chemical reaction, as mentioned in the previous lessons, every reaction has a certain rate, or essentially change of something over the change in time. And usually we look at change in concentration over change in time most often when looking at reactions involving solutions. So when you're looking at a rate law, essentially what you're doing is you're building an expression that will show the relationship between the reactant concentrations and how much of an influence they have on the rate. So for example, this reaction here is saying, okay, X and Y are making some sort of product, sure, Z. Okay, so rate laws always deal with the reactants only, okay? So in your rate law, you would never have a Z as part of your expression. It would be discussing X and Y. So meaning when we change the concentration of X, how would that impact the reaction to produce Z? Or if we were to change the concentration of Y, how would that have an impact on changing the amount of Z being made? And very often they have different relationships. You may have one reactant that has a larger impact on the rate than the other. You might have them be the same, or you may have one that is essentially has zero impact on the rate. So every single reaction is different. Okay, so there is no way of actually calculating a rate expression. You have to make a rate expression based on experimental data. So if I want to know how does X influence Z or how does Y influence Z, there is no formula that I can plug numbers into. Even if I had concentration numbers, there's nothing I can really do unless I see experimental data. Okay, so rate, typically how a rate law will look, just to give you an idea. Okay, so rate is equal to K, which we'll talk about in a second here. K is essentially known as a rate law constant. Okay, so K is different for every reaction, and actually every temperature that the reaction is happening at also has a different K. So if I'm doing this reaction at 25 degrees, it will have its own K value. If I change this to 18 degrees, the K value will change. It is temperature and reaction specific. But a typical rate law will be R is equal to K. You have the concentration of the reactants to some exponent number. And the exponents are actually going to tell us what the relationship is with the rate of formation for the products, as I was mentioning. So the exponent values can only be found through experiment. So it has nothing to do with the exponents. I should say the coefficients. So let's say I had 2x plus y making z. That does not mean that it is x to the 2 and y to the 1. Okay, that's incorrect. You might actually, through experimental data, find maybe it's x to the 0 and y to the 2. These values are only found through experimental data. So usually when you're doing these types of rate law questions, you'll have a chart with a whole bunch of information about different trials, different experimentations, and then we're going to determine the rate law from there. Okay, so the rate law expression or rate law equation, as I mentioned, takes on the same format every time. So you have R is equal to K, which is a rate constant, which is experimentally determined for a specific reaction at a specific temperature and pressure. Okay, normally we are discussing temperature and pressure at SATP, standard ambient temperature and pressure, but if that changes, so will the K. And then you have your reactants to some exponent. So let's say we had a reaction of A plus B plus C making E. My rate expression will be R is equal to K times A to, I don't know what the exponent is yet, B to, I'm not sure what the exponent is yet, and then C with, well, we don't know the exponent yet. How we figure out these exponents, as I mentioned, is with experimental data, okay? But just so you're aware in terms of like terminology, the exponents that we are going to solve for are known as the individual orders of a reaction. So let's say we figured out A has a 2, B is a 0, and C is a 2, okay? So the order of reaction for A would be a 2, because that's what the exponent is. The order of reaction for B would be 0. For C would be a 2. And then we have what's called the overall order of reaction. So the overall order is essentially you add up all of the exponent values. So the overall order for this example here would be 4, right? 2 plus 0 plus 2. So again, you have to, the hardest part, personally I find with these rate laws is how to figure out the exponents. Once you have the exponents, everything else will piece together quite nicely. Okay, so here we have a reaction. So we have bromate ions reacting with hydrogen sulfite, and we have a bunch of products being made. Remember, when we're doing orders or rate law expressions, we only care about the reactants. All right, so here in this case, we have R is equal to K, bromate to the number 1, and bisulfite or hydrogen sulfite to the number 2. So that has nothing to do with the coefficients, right? Coefficients are just there to write the balanced reaction. How do we figure this out? From experimental data, right? But if we were to look at the orders, right? So this would be order 1, order 2, overall order would be 3, right? 1 plus 2. Okay, so let's talk about, before we get into analyzing data, let's talk about what the exponents mean. So if you remember, I mentioned that the exponents are really going to show us the relationship between that reactant and the impact it has on the rate of production. So let's say we were talking about something with an exponent 0. If you have an exponent 0, essentially what the relationship is that it has no impact on the rate. Okay, 0 impact on the rate. So if we were to look at this from like a mathematical standpoint, right? So if we were to double the initial concentration, it's like you're going to be essentially doubling the concentration of your reactant, but the exponent is going to be a 0. So essentially, any number to the exponent 0 is a 0. So if you were to imagine, right, the number that you are influencing the concentration by going into the reactant space, and then essentially the result of applying the exponent would be the impact it has on the rate. So even if you were to triple that concentration, you're going to have 0 impact on the rate. Even if you were to do 10 times the concentration, the impact would still be 0 on the rate. So obviously, looking at this from a point of view of, if I wanted to increase the rate of a reaction, this is important information to know, because if something has an exponent 0, there's no point in me changing the concentration for that particular item, right? So in general, yes, you're told, concentration, when you increase it, will increase the rate. Well, that's not entirely true, because it's going to depend on the mechanics of that reaction. Not all reactants are equal, okay? It has to do with the mechanism that reaction is a part of. And that goes back to, if you remember looking at the Hess's law mechanisms. Some steps of a reaction go very fast, some steps go very slow. So the reaction dependency depends on what part of the mechanism that is in, the reactant, of course. And if speeding it up will have a change, right? Or by increasing the concentration, if it does nothing, it does nothing. So this is what I mean by experimental data. You have to be able to see, okay, well, trial and error. Well, let's increase it. Oh, nothing happened. Well, the exponent is going to be 0. if you have an exponent of 1, okay, so what that means is you essentially have a linear relationship. So meaning whatever change you do to the concentration, the exact same change will happen to the rate. So if we were to double the initial concentration, the rate would double. So again, the same reasoning up here. If we were to double the concentration and the exponent is 1, you're going to have a value of 2, right? Anything to the exponent 1 is itself. So if we double the concentration, that means we're going to double the rate. If I have triple the concentration, I was about to put a 0 in there, that means we're going to have triple the rate. It also works in the reverse. If you want to slow down a reaction, if you wanted to cut the concentration in half, you're going to have half of the rate. So again, this is important information to know if you're trying to manipulate how quickly or slowly a reaction is proceeding. So if you have an exponent with a 2, essentially whatever you do to the reactant concentration, it's going to square that result. So if we were to double the concentration to the exponent 2, our rate would actually be quadruple the speed. So it would quadruple the rate. And again, whatever the changes you're doing to the exponent 2 is what would result for the rate. So if I have 3, the exponent 2, so 3 times 3, right, I'm going to have 9 times the rate will now be sped up 9 times. So hopefully you're noticing a trend here. The larger the exponent number, the larger of an impact that substance will have on the rate. Okay, so you can also have an exponent of 3 or 4, of course, and it just corresponds accordingly, right? So if you were to have, let's say, a reactant to the exponent 3, whatever change you make, it's essentially going to cube whatever that happens to be. So if I were to double the concentration, it's going to be 2 times 2 times 2, which is going to be now 8 times a faster rate. If I have an exponent 4, same deal, right? So if I have 2 to the 4, you're doing 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which I believe is 16 times, right? So as your exponents get larger, the impact it has on the rate continues to go up. Okay, so let's take a look at how can we figure out the rate then? If we know, or I should say, how can we figure out the exponents once we have this experimental data? So we'll look at that in the next part.